Hello and welcome to another episode of Supercoach Insider. This is Chris, and it's been a while, guys. I'm really sorry that it's taken this long for us to get back behind the mic, but it's a new season, and a new season comes with it new vigor and a new opportunity to get some content out. So I do apologise, and for those playing at home, I think I alluded to it in the last podcast that I did myself. But I had to have some skin cancers removed, and it took me out of action from behind the camera for quite a while. So that explains my absence. And if you can notice here, there we go. So there was actually two skin cancers on my nose that were removed, and the way that they had to do it, unfortunately, they couldn't just like cut it and then like restitch the skin together. They had to because there was two close enough together that they would impact each other, but not close enough that they could just take one large cut. I had to get a skin graft. So what they actually had to do was take skin from my forehead here in a big long straight line, which is why I now have a scar there. And then I got a skin graft right across my nose. And to say that it was a little bit shocking when I got the bandages off as to what it looked like is an understatement. My nose was black. It looked like I had a frostbitten nose. And it took probably, I would say, around 3 to 4 months before it started looking a lot like as good as it is now. And what they didn't tell me when they first had the consult was that like it'll take a year to heal. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. Well, that's fine. Thanks for telling me. So yeah, it's actually I'm about 6 months in now. It happened in early July. So yeah, about just over 6 months, I'd say, and about halfway there. So for those wondering, that's why obviously I didn't get back behind the mic for the rest of the season. But we are back for season 2025, ready to rumble. And obviously I had a look this afternoon, and I was able to go through and get a bit of an idea of what I would like to see. But I'm going to preface this by saying at this stage, obviously, it looks like there's a lot of value. and so this is a little bit mid-price madness. I do sort of... I don't know how this season's going to play out, and I think everyone's kind of in the same boat. We really don't know how the flex position is going to impact overall. All I will say is that, in my opinion, obviously you definitely need a 23rd premium to try and weed out your bottom weakest score towards the back end of the season. But early in the season, obviously, it's basically just going to be your highest scoring rookie, right, or highest averaging rookie that you're going to have in that position. So at this point, it doesn't really matter too much. But it does knock out your lowest score on field. So it makes rookie roulette a little bit easier in the early rounds. Makes if you cop a donut or a 1 week injury a lot easier to manage. You know, there's quite a lot of benefits to the flex, and I quite enjoy it. But it will take a little bit to understand sort of how to best utilize it. But because you actually do have that extra player on field, unfortunately, everyone else is taking a little bit of haircut. So whilst they've obviously, slightly reduced the cost of everything, you still have to sort of, take a haircut where you can in order to achieve something decent in that spot. Otherwise, it's just going to be a rookie, right? So I think at the moment I've probably gone a little bit too mid-price heavy. And there's a couple of positions on my field that I would say, okay, I can see myself going, cut this guy down to a rookie, cut this guy down to a rookie, and then have another premium as opposed to two mid-prices per se. And as the season unfolds, preseason unfolds, we'll get a better idea of where these guys rank. And if I wanted to chuck my money into a different option, then I can do so. So that's sort of my plan at the moment. Kind of go in with, okay, these are the guys that have a potential to blow up. As the preseason narrows, we firm on a selection, and then we can throw the money into other premiums as they come around. So, I've kind of weaned off the idea of going real heavy guns and rookies the last couple of years, and genuinely has paid off, especially in the early rounds. And in the last year, especially, I think quite a lot of people did towards the back end of last year. I was in the top 1,000 right up until the end of the buy rounds, and then just slowly just faded and faded and faded. And even in the last weeks, like I think when everyone was copping massive injuries and outs, etc., I was I was doing that too. I think I ended up dropping to just the back end of the 2000 mark, so not too bad, but just not really as competitive as obviously what I'd like to be and what I would consider myself. Yeah, I'd like to consider myself someone who's regularly in the top 1,000, and that's how I want to finish the year. So, yeah, let's get it kicked off, guys. And so we'll start from the back line. I don't think it's any surprise. I think he's probably going to be the most sought after D1, and that's going to be Harry Sheasel. Look, there's obviously you could put in, Sam Flanders here. I think, to be honest, I don't think you can really go wrong with either. I think either one's going to be fine. If you can afford both, great. But you know, one thing about Flanders last year was his consistency. Regardless of his role, he just put up numbers, right? So he's going to be a good option. Sheasel, obviously, I think that probably the only reason why I'm opting for Sheasel over Flanders is upside, right? Like, does he have another gear? I think he might, right? Averaged 118 in his second year. He might have another gear. So it's that upside that I'm looking for, and why I've gone with him. Flanders obviously still is like first breakout year. First year he's really been a regular mainstay player in that team. Does he have another gear? Potentially as well. So both of those guys could be in that mix. I look at guys like Luke Ryan and I think, please not again. Like, I know it's almost like what confirmation bias. I just don't want him in that team, right? Like I just don't want to see him successful. But he'll probably be good again. So he's another option that you could look at. Oh, and one thing I will say as well is that I haven't put too much emphasis or thought into the buys yet. Unless it's, say, someone that I'm like, sort of coin flipping between and I'll go, oh, okay, cool, I'll go with them because of the buys. Like at this stage, early preseason, I haven't really taken that too much into consideration. Whitfield's a no for me. We saw later in the season he'd started to get a lot more attention than what he was in the early part of the season. That may continue, though. Obviously, what we generally see, early in the season is that people just don't tag. They just forget how damaging players can be, and they sort of let it unwind for a few weeks until they get up and running. Zorko, is that an aberration? Is he going to play the same role? Kitty Coleman coming back into that mix. What does Zorko's role look like this season? I'm not too sure, and so that's a big no for me. Jeremy McGovern, again, just too inconsistent with injuries. Jack Sinclair's one that I like, so there's a chance for him to go one step further. I thought he was older than what he was. He's only 30 this year, I believe, or 30 turning 31. But we obviously saw when he's in defence, he just pigs it up. And with the inclusions of some mainstays in that midfield, it should free him up to be the halfback general that we all know and love. So that's an option. Houston, obviously, I think it's a bit of a risk. We haven't seen a really great defender for Collingwood come through under McRae's system in terms of Supercoach scoring. And of course, I think he misses round 0, so you don't even get to have a look at him before selecting. So he's a no for me at this stage, and I'll watch for a potential upgrade after his bye. That's the plan with Houston. Martin, I think he landed 105. That's kind of exactly where I thought he would. What's he doing this season? That's a little bit too early to tell. Jordan Clark is definitely one that's on my radar, but that's probably where it stops. Probably, Wangani Malira. Yeah, maybe. I could see him taking another step. Holmes, potentially another step, but I'm not really locked into him at that price. Sicily's one that could definitely take that step, with the 2 inclusions of the defenders coming back. So that's probably about where, in terms of premiums, where I'd be looking. But with my team, as I said, I'm going very value-orientated to begin with. So let me just quickly pull up. Can't forget where I am. All right, no, that's not the one. Okay. We've got to go a little bit further down, guys, to get to where I'm actually leaning towards. And that is going to be Matty Roberts. So where are you, Matty Roberts? I think he's down in the 400 somewhere. So I know this is, D2, a little bit scary to be going this low into the barrel, 434. But we saw what he could do, obviously, once he was basically given the general role down back. Given all the kick-outs, they look to use him in that sort of quarterback position and role. What we don't know is how Dean Cox will use him. So this is definitely going to be a preseason watch. But I think he's got a huge high upside, and at very least, I think he can probably make at least 100k, and potentially even more, and be a top six keeper with that role. So I really like Matt Roberts as an option. Moving on to the next one. So again, just value town, guys. I really like Harry Perriman as an option. Now, of course, he does have that round zero bye, but at least we'll get to see what his role should be like. Now, the one thing caveat to that is, of course, what happens when Dan Houston comes back into that mix. I think he's probably going to play more midfield than he is defence. And if I was to guess, I'd say 60% midfield. Now, the reason for that is his type of player is the one thing that we don't have at Collingwood, right? So, sort of almost he's not a huge midfielder, but he's a big-bodied midfielder. He's a defensive midfielder. He runs two ways, and he can score for Supercoach as well when he does play midfield. So one that I think, if he does get that midfield role, will definitely be in top six contention, but maybe towards, the back end of that top six and a top 10 inclusion. But again, at 417k, there's not much better around there for that price. So don't hate it at all. Definitely one to watch in the preseason, but definitely one I can see myself starting if his role is as predicted. Now, the next guy is a little bit more conjecture again. So Callum Mills, guys, I think everyone's going to be talking about him because he's just so cheap, right? So 357k. We know 2 years ago he was 620k off the top of my head, right? This guy can play footy and he can score Supercoach points. The thing's going to be his role and his body, of course. Now, do you have him? Look, he's the sort of guy that with the right role, he can be a top six defender quite easily. And so that's why you have him in for now. But if it turns out that he's going to be playing a lot of wing time, a lot of forward time or something like that, I suppose at halfback, he has shown the ability to score okay, but realistically, where he needs to be to score big points is as an inside midfielder. I'm just not sure that role really exists anymore at Sydney. It did as early as last year. But the CBA rotations will say a lot. So that's one that you need to watch for preseason, where they're training, what their roles like in the preseason games and things like that will absolutely determine how hot of Callum Mills I am. And he's one that I could see myself, cutting to a rookie and then coming up to a premium in that spot. The next one's Kitty Coleman. So I think it's a bit of a no-brainer pick. I think this is going to be one of the most selected picks. Obviously, as long as he's playing round one, but I believe he did his ACL in round one, wasn't it? Or the preseason game maybe even as well. Where is he? Kitty Coleman. Coleman. Where are you, buddy? I think he was pretty cheap from memory. There he is, 269k. Can't really go wrong with that. His upside's kind of unknown because we anticipated last year. I think it was only 400k last year. A lot of people did start him or were looking to start him because Daniel Richard left. So they were very excited about his ability and to accumulate the ball. I think in the grand final against Collingwood, he put up some really, really good numbers. So everyone was excited. Coleman's the way. Coleman's going to do this. Coleman's going to do that. And then bang, unfortunately, does his ACL. Here we are 12 months later. So now we get him a little bit cheaper. And so we don't need him to be, say, a top 6, top 10 defender. But he does have the scope to be able to do that if they give him the right role to do so. So what happens with Zorko? What happens with the kickouts? All of these are sort of up in the air at the moment in regards to his role. Worst case, what's the average? Worst case, 80, 85 maybe? and best case 95 to 105. So not bad at all. It's for 260k or 270k. You can't really go wrong. All right, so now we get into the rookies. I have just gone with, honestly, they're just all placeholders. One thing I know, that's been sort of briefly chatted about, is Josh Sin replacing Dan Houston's role, or at least vying for it. So where are you, Sin? I should just search for these guys, eh? Let's make it a bit easier on myself. There we go, Josh Sin. So he's at 229,500. And then there's just some other ones in here. I've put just Jacob Ryan in. I think that Jacob Ryan might get a shout at some point in the season. However, he's just a placeholder. I don't think it's going to be early. And then it's Saad El Hawley, who I think should get a chance early. Should have really got a chance. Probably would have got a chance had he not been for injury during last season. So I think that he'll be in most teams or preseason teams at this stage. There is my initial defense. As I said, heavy on the mid prices, light on the high end premiums, but it's going to leave a little bit to build our team as we go through. All right, so midfield, what am I thinking? So first things first, obviously I'd love to have, Bont, Butters, Dacos, Heaney, you name it, I'd love to have it. The reality is, very rarely does the top Supercoach scorer ever back it up, unless their name is Marcus Bontempelli. However, I don't think that I'm going to be going with Bont this year, and that's going to be tough, to be honest. Obviously, 126.4 average. McRae leaving that midfield, but they did have... Who do they have come into that midfield? I think they've got Matt Kenny that's come through. They've obviously got some good talent there. I mean, Bailey Smith left, but he wasn't playing anyway last year. Is there some natural regression in his game? Maybe, maybe not. He's still the Supercoach champion data love child. But at 680k, it's a little steep for what I'm after at the moment. And I do obviously want to pick him up. But at this point, I'm probably just going to go with Butters as my sort of mainstay. The one I was flipping up here is obviously Dacos, but again, he has the round 0 game and then the early bye. And I believe if you look at Dacos's, I think there's a tag potential early as well. And it just rings alarm bells because last year, obviously, we all got juked by Dacos, dropping all that cash right at his bye. So anyone that didn't start him got a real leg up. And so it's kind of playing in the back of my mind. So maybe that's a bit of bias creeping in. You could just go, look, Dacos is the best player in the game. Let's just get Nick Dacos. But yeah, I think I'm just going to go Butters at this stage. And I'm not going to go, again, really super heavy on the team. It's going to be a little bit lighter around. So the next one I'm going to go with is a guy that has a little bit of value in his price point, and that's Tom Green. Now, he does have an early buy, of course, but Tom Green obviously had that early injury, so there's a bit of skin on the bone there, a bit of meat on the bone. I think it works out that his true average is about 110, right? So he's actually valued, let's say 110, so yeah, closer to that 600k mark. So you get about 25k of value built into his price point, and I do believe that he's got another level to get to yet. His disposal is what's let him down so far in his career. He's definitely able to accumulate. He gets high contested possessions, kicks the occasional sausage roll. It's just that efficiency, right? Can he pull it all together? He's going to be in the guts of that midfield again. GWS are probably going to be a top 4 team, potentially even better. I really rate GWS this season. So Tom Green, I think, fits the bill in terms of what I'm looking for. And he's at that price point where it's really not a risk to take him because I think he's going to be consistent as well. But the guys around him, there's no one really sort of putting their hand up too high. Maybe Walsh is the other one that I've considered at this price point. What's that, 10k extra to go to Sam Walsh? Is that good? I mean, the guys around him, Goulden, Anderson, Crouch, Yo, Libba, Laird, maybe Warner, contract year Warner, the Chad. And then we get down to Track. So definitely Track is going to be a mainstay here. Obviously a guy we know that can go up to that sort of 115 to 120 average. Had a down year, had an injury. He's going to be on for a bounce back in my opinion. So I think he's arguably probably the best value selection in the midfield. And you got to remember, he's still only very young. So he's hitting his prime, coming off a year what Melbourne would like to forget. And it's probably going to be their is it last roll of the dice for Melbourne before they blow things up? I'm not sure. It's going to be an interesting Melbourne season, that's for sure. But yeah, Track is Track. He is him. And he's at a price point where it makes it really valuable to pick him up. So, all right. Now, the next one is his teammate. Now, it's just a value pick. I think at this point, everyone's going to have Oliver, or most people will have Oliver, with an eye towards, okay, you got to prove something in the preseason for us to select you. Because we've all seen what Clayton Oliver can do and is. And last year was not it. For a variety of different reasons that is well documented and I won't get into too much. Has he put that all behind him? Because at his price point, he is far and away the best value mid in the game, or value player probably in the game. He's the only one there that can go 120 plus at 450k or less. Not bad at all, but can he do it? And then, it's kind of banking on Melbourne to have a bit of a bounce back. But we digress and we move on. All right, so some more value in here. Will Ashcroft. I think that, again, he's proven that he's an absolute gun scorer. I don't think that's a question. I think his mid-time only increases as he gets further removed from that ACL injury. And he's just going to be an absolutely explosion, right? So today I got asked the question, does Brisbane's mid-mix change much? And the answer is probably not too much. I think that will gain a little bit, but he's really only had, I think, 45% CBAs anyway last year. So if he was stuck at 50%, that'd be fine. His natural progression will get him definitely up towards that 100 mark easily, potentially a lot more. And if he gets to, say, 60, 65% CBAs and becomes the guy that we all know that he's capable of doing, the sky's the limit. So he's one of the guys that I definitely want to be on early. Of course, again, I haven't really considered that too much, but that is a reason to stay away. And but at this stage, I'm going with it. So Now the next one in this sort of mix here is Mateus Philippou, which I will bring up. So Philippou had an interesting last few games where he absolutely started to explode. Where's his price point? Here we go. Now I know he's a forward mid, but I've got him in there as a swing. I personally believe that there was a bit of conjecture last year that he only wanted to play midfield, and if he was playing in the team, he didn't want to play forward anymore. And then they dropped into the VFL to get some form, found form, absolutely killed it. Came back in, they gave him the shot, and then bang, out of nowhere. Well, not really out of nowhere, because we all know the talent that he has. He just produces, right? And he's at a price point that if he does get that role, a mainstay CBA role, he's going to explode. Now the problem is, St Kilda went and just got all these new midfielders in. So, is that role still available for him? Does Jack McRae, sitting in there? What does that do? It's a bit interesting in terms of what's going to happen to that midfield. But at this point, again, he's a watch. He's also one that I can see, okay, do I cut and then go up to a premium elsewhere? Is that one of those guys? That's currently where I'm thinking about with Mateus Philippou. But look, I want to be on him. And then we have the rookies. Now, these, again, all up in the air. It'll be based on form and what happens in the preseason and yada, yada, yada. So I'm just going to throw in some here that I think have a shot. So Finn O'Sullivan. We've got Levi Ashcroft, of course. Who else do we have in here? I think is it Josh Smiley? Yep. Yeah, he could get some early time with Richmond being as bad as they are. And then some mainstay guys that literally have just never got the run of the park. Devon Robertson, and I think it's Erasmus as well. Like, is he going to have some games that he can not be sub in? What does their midfield mix look like? Is he best 22 now? All of that's up in the air. But these guys, obviously, they're at a price point where other rookie mids can put their hand up and they can be shuffled out, etc. So that's it. Yeah. So, I mean, would you call that, say, 3 premium, 3 mid prices, essentially? Is that how you'd call that? With all your sort of mainstay rooks? That could obviously be changed as well by having more rookies that from in midfield that demand a spot. So yeah, I'm a little bit open to that. Now the ruck line I think is pretty basic. I'm keeping it simple. Cherry's going in there. I'm passing on Gawn at the moment with an option to sort of look at an upgrade pathway at some point if it deems worth it. But Cherry I think is going to be the. I think actually Cherry overtakes Gawn this year as R1, and Gawn may have a slight regression. Oh, that doesn't sound great. It sounds like I'm going to get punished. And the other one here I'm going to go with at the moment is Tom De Koning, so TDK. Huge upside. You get a little bit of a haircut on the price, which is nice. From the sort of value selection rucks, he's really the only one that stands out to me. Other than that, no one really takes my fancy. You might go with, say, a Matt Flynn if you were trying to save a little bit of cash. I do think he's going to be their number one ruckman over there, so he's going to make cash. At 260k though, it's kind of hard to squeeze into some teams. I've just gone with the loophole ruck option here, and I think the cheapest ruck forward option is Charlie West out of Collingwood, but we'll see how we go there. All right, into the forward line. Now, forward line I think is going to be probably the one that's the most common out of most people's teams at the moment. So I do have a couple of little changes. So this one's going to be a little bit strange, but I'm going to start. A lot of people are going with Horn Francis in this role, maybe an Isaac Rankin in this sort of F1 position. This is where I change slightly. So I'm actually going for value straight off the bat. I'm jumping in for Matt Kennedy. Now, this is going to be, again, one of those ones where if he gets the role, like we know Matt Kennedy is a midfielder can score. And in the forward line, can he score over 90? You betcha he can. Like, this guy has average of 100 plus written all over him if he is a CBA mainstay midfielder. I'm just not sure he's going to get that. And did he just get bevoed? What I come back to is this. I just don't understand the whole. Okay, I'm leaving Carlton because they've said to me they want me to stay at half forward, and I'm going to the Bulldogs because Bevo's proven that he can give me what I want and give me a midfield minutes. Like, that doesn't make any sense. And from a Bulldogs perspective, why on earth would they go and grab Matt Kennedy if it wasn't to play him in midfield when he said specifically, I want to play midfield? So have they said to him, you come here, we're playing midfield? And if that's the case, at 414k, he's kind of a no-brainer pick. But again, one that is definitely one to watch. But he's so cheap that it's just like, okay, well, cool. Added to that, another guy is cheap, Jack McRae. I think he'll be in 95% of competitive teams at this stage, unless in the preseason he just completely drops through the floor, but pretty confident on that. Similarly, Bailey Smith, training inside mid, seems to be well recovered from his knee. We know what I think Bailey Smith 1 year was F1 or F2. Like, he was pretty damn good that year. So there's every chance that he's got, averaging 95 to 100 plus or around that mark. So those three, again, all three guys that we know what they're capable of as a midfielder, and if they get mid-minutes, then they should be easily top 6. Similarly, Luke Parker. right? So we got to go down into the threes. I think it's 350 or something similar. So what happens with Luke Parker, guys? So we've seen Luke Parker be a very good midfielder and a very good forward at times. He's also had some really good scoring stints, but he's sort of gone his multiple years of 100 plus scoring average. Do they use him as a buffer for the kids in the midfield, or do they use him as a leader in the forward line? Because they could do with some scoring up forward. And yeah, the probable answer is he probably does both, right? So what's his split? Are we looking at 50-50 mid-forward? What does that do for his average? All these are a little bit unknown in that North team. I really want to see it. But at 343k, again, he's also one that can be a top 6 forward, potentially top 10. And you kind of can't miss that value if it's going to be presented that way. And then the last one is Caleb Daniel, of course. And I think, again, just stupid value. Like, if he's going to play defense, which is the only place he's really been able to play successfully in his career, in my opinion, at 269k, he's an absolute no-brainer. I think he's averaged, if not 100, very close to it before. And in the forward line, that's going to be a keeper, right? So 5 guys, essentially, that have 90 to 95 plus potential, all severely underpriced. So not bad. The forward line is going to be a place of value. And then to round this up, nothing crazy here. I think Jack Martin at 150k. I think also Tom Lynch at 183. I think it's 180k or something like that. 183. Yeah. I think that if he ends up starting and he's not injured, he's one that I would definitely look at. But Jack Martin, the only reason I'm saying this is because some reason Geelong's medical team just know how to get the most out of people. So his career's cooked, he's done, he's whatever. Goes to Geelong, all of a sudden he's the next Brian Myers. Like, it's insane. Like, so I kind of want to be on that early, but again, preseason we'll see. These are just rookie price guys anyway. And then the last two, I think I've got, who do I have here last? Connor Stone. I think, none of these guys really matter too much, I think. One of them's Geordie Payne again. Doesn't really matter. Where is Connor Stone? There we go. And now into the flex position. So as I said earlier, realistically with the flex position, it's just going to be your, essentially your highest averaging non-playing rookie. At this stage, I've got in here Elijah Hewitt, who I think is going to be a pretty good cash cow for us this season. I think he'll be in most teams early, but again, it's going to depend on whether or not he's playing, what his preseason looks like, etc. And that rounds out my team. And as I said, and I wasn't joking earlier, scrolling up, remaining $0. And I did not plan that way, guys. That's just how it all came out in my first team and first crack this afternoon. So we'll go through it from the top. So Sheasel, Roberts, Perryman, Mills, Coleman, Sin with Ryan and El Hawley on the bench. Butters, Green, Petraka, Oliver, Ashcroft, Philippou, O'Sullivan, Ashcroft of the brother variety, Smiley, Dev Rob, Erasmus. In the ruck line, Cherry, De Koning and West. In the forward line, Kennedy, McRae, Smith, Parker, Daniel, Martin, with Payne, Stone, and in on the bench, and Elijah Hewitt in that flex position at the moment. That's it, guys. We will be definitely doing a team podcast with me, Swizz, and Ben, obviously in the coming days. Probably not tomorrow night because I don't actually finish. I've got basketball training with our eldest tomorrow night until 9 o'clock. But we will get one out to you. We might record it tomorrow night. Might not come out till Friday morning though. Outside of that, we'll be doing our weekly content and any other relevant content that we want to do. And if there's any specific content that you want us to run with, shout in the comments, just below. But thank you very much, and we'll talk to you soon. Cheers, guys.